you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for that very warm reception. Thank you for coming. I mean, I primarily came here so I can listen to a really good conversation discussion. Isn't that why you came here? Yeah, I don't know what the makeup of this crowd is. I'm hoping it's a pretty bipartisan crowd. I am. We need that. Listen, I originally ran as a Tea Party candidate in 2010. We were mortgaging our children's future. That hasn't gotten any better. Okay, we're exacerbating the problem. But right now, I think the greatest threat facing our nation is that we are so horribly divided politically. Remember, it was President Lincoln during the Civil War said that, quoting scripture, said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." And that's true. The good news is we're not a naturally divided people. I mean, think about it. In the major goals of life, safety, security, taking care of your family, having enough opportunity and prosperity so you can plan for your retirement and take care of your family. I mean, these are the major goals of life, and we all share them. So you have to ask yourself, so why are we so divided? It's because you have political figures, you have political groups that are purposely dividing us. And I'm saying, don't let them. Now, I'm here. I have the privilege to talk a little bit about Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard because I've met both of them. You know, I got to know Bobby during the whole COVID issue. Got to realize that he never sought to champion things like children's health or question the potential possibility that there may be vaccine injuries. It was by and large thrust on simply wanted to be heard. And so finally one of them showed up on his front step with a stack full of research paper, and he knew how to read research, and said, "I'm not going to leave till you read it." And to his credit, he read. And he got educated. His eyes were opened, and he was not able to close his eyes. He couldn't turn his back on it. So I've gotten to know Bobby Kennedy, first of all, as a very smart person, as a very good person. We held an event on chronic illness a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C., and as he was thanking me for the work I've done. He said, he used to think of me as a supervillain. Listen, I knew I didn't agree with Bobby Kennedy on a bunch of things, but I also recognize here's a man who lost his father as a teenager, lost his uncle. He's gone through an awful lot. But when Bobby Kennedy called me up, prior to making his decision to suspend his campaign, he wanted to ask my evaluation whether or not he could be confirmed. And the first words out of my mouth is that this possibility. He said, "Bobby, this is a big issue. Chronic illness is something we need to address. But as important as that is, what he and Tulsi Gabbard have done in joining forces with President Trump is they are showing exactly how a horribly divided nation can be healed and can be unified," right? It's you set those political differences aside, you concentrate on an area of agreement. And that's what hopefully this conversation is about here today and tonight, is let's focus on those areas of agreement. We have enormous challenges facing this nation. Enormous. I don't want to ruin your night. I'm oftentimes not the most uplifting character because I tell the truth. I lay out what the reality is. But it will be so much easier if we address these problems as a unified nation. And that to me is what Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, President Trump, they've given us an opportunity now in a nonpartisan way to start addressing these major problems they're going to be discussing today. And I could not be more grateful to them for doing so. So again, I hope all of you have a very open mind. I hope you enjoy the conversation. And again, I just want to thank you for coming here and having that open mind. So God bless all of you, and enjoy the evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Republican candidate for United States Senator Eric Hovde.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. You know, it's interesting. I'm standing here today, and it's 1 week. 1 week. Yeah, 1 week to take back our country. Look, I got into this 9.5 months ago because I love our country, and I don't like the direction our country's been going for quite some time, and certainly not over the last 4 years. And as I've talked about on my campaign, we're bankrupting our country, creating inflation. We're destroying our domestic security with crazy ideas like defund the police and opening our southern border. We're jeopardizing our international security, and we have wars all over the world. And the division that's ripping us apart. But I'm really honored tonight to have RFK and Tulsi Gabbard here. Let's give them a round of applause. RFK and I share many similar views, and one is we have a health crisis in our country, a very serious health crisis, not just a health care, but a health crisis. And I can speak very succinctly about this because, you know, as a 27-year-old guy that was 6'3", 225 pounds, fought martial arts, I thought I was Superman. And then I got a diagnosis. Get on my knees and pray to God, just give me till 40. Just give me till 40. So my daughters could see the man I am. Fortunately, God didn't just give me to 40. He took my life in a very different turn and made my MS out hour and a half, 2 hours every day. A little hard on this campaign trail, but every day, keep mentally positive and all the rest. And I had to go through our whole healthcare system and see the issues and the problems. Because folks, like RFK has been talking about, we have a severe healthcare problem in our country today. Obesity rates, type 2 diabetes rates are skyrocketing, cancer rates are skyrocketing. Mental health problems are off the charts, particularly amongst our young. I give a lot of statistics, I'm a numbers guy, but probably the most stunning number of people, according to the military, cannot qualify for military service due to obesity, mental health problems, and addiction. Folks, this country's in crisis. We've got to fix not just our health care system that is breaking, that's driving up the cost constantly, and yes, you betcha. Now, honestly, we've got a lot working against us. We've got a food industry that shoves microprocessed foods down our system that our bodies don't know how to process. Yes. We have drinks that they shove sugar in constantly. The amount of sugar we consume is off the charts. It'll destroy anybody's health. And then you can't even get a good, real dialogue on these issues. Because, you know, when you go to our healthcare system, instead of trying to get us to be healthy, they want to give you a pill. Right? Here's a pill. Take that for that symptom. No, we need to get healthy. We need to fix the underlying problems to our health. But you know, unfortunately, we have giant corporate interests called Big Pharma working against us for that. And the other one, I hate to say it, but media. Do you know the biggest advertiser today on media is Big Pharma. They spend $8 billion a year advertising, trying to shove a pill at you and you and you and you. And then you can't even get real discussions. Look at what happened during COVID. Half the things they told you were wrong. Hey, you should have never gone indoors. You should have gone outdoors, being in sunlight, exercising. Heck, some of the most preeminent, should I say, virologists and epidemiologists wrote something called the Great Barrington Declaration that said lockdowns would never work. And what did the media and big tech call them? Climate deniers. It had nothing to do with the climate. So, folks, we have a lot of issues to fix in this country. We have to come together. We cannot let the media divide us. I got to just tell you this one thing because it's so priceless. I'm getting interviewed after I was at a charter school in Milwaukee today. And a reporter looks at me in all seriousness and says, well, what do you think of the divisive comments that were said at the podium at the Trump rally in New York? And I said, excuse me, what comments? He said, the one about Puerto Rico. I said, you mean by the comedian? And he said, yeah. I said, well, I think that's an unfortunate comment by a comedian, but excuse me, didn't the left call President Trump Hitler, and it was a group of fascists? This is how they spin everything. Point is, we've got to take our country back. We've got to heal our country. We've got to get this done. We've got 1 week. Grab your friends, grab your neighbors, grab your colleagues, grab everybody you know. Get them to vote, and let's go restore the American dream. Thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you for RFK.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
Lose control of body and soul. Don't move too fast, people just take it slow. Don't get ahead, just jump into it. Y'all hear about it? The P's will do it. Get started, get stupid.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for American former professional football defensive lineman, Satima Gali.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Honored to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, how you feeling tonight? I love it. Let me ask that question one more time, and I want you to turn the volume up about 10 clicks. Click, 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 click. How you feeling tonight? Yes, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and you are in for a special treat tonight. You see, for most of my life, well, look, I first of all played at New England under Bill Belichick. Any Tom Brady fans in here? And they're like, no. Good. It's a good thing he's not running, okay? But I never wanted anything to do with government or politics because in my mind, my vote and my voice did not make a difference. Has anyone ever felt that way before? Yeah, it's like, well, who am I, right? Some of us are like, who am I to go vote, or who am I, like the government, the system, it's so big. To Gabbard, and she says, hey, I want you to come to this event with me. So I show up, how about a round of applause for Tulsi? Yes, yeah, yes. You guys are in for a treat tonight. So I get a call from my sister Tulsi, and she's like, come to this event. So I show up to the event. Now, I'd never met her in person. We had talked, via text, and I am a man who believes in God, yes, thank you. Yep, thank you. So I meet Tulsi, and we have this conversation, and within the first few minutes, again, I believe that your heart can discern truth. and I could feel the power of God as she's speaking to me. And I went from one side, like, you know, I want nothing to do with government. It's too divisive and politics, and, you know, that my voice and my vote doesn't make a difference. Within about 10 minutes, I spent an hour with her. I had this conversion. I had this transformation, because tonight you are going to feel what I felt. Yeah, you're gonna feel it. So my request of you is, as we go through this evening together, it's gonna be magical, it's gonna be transformation. I ask you not just to listen with your eyes. I know this is tough to look at, guys. I'm not The Rock, I'm not his stunt double, okay? But I ask you to listen with your eyes, listen with your ears, with your body language to be awake. But most importantly, I ask you, as a brother, your brother, to listen with your heart and let the Spirit of God touch your heart as you listen to the answers, and let God confirm the truth of things to you so that you can make the best decision and know that your decision will determine the destiny of our great country, the United States of America. Thank you. And so with that said, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor, it is a blessing, it is a privilege to welcome to the stage. And I need you to make some noise, right? I need you to let them know that we are here to support and to listen and to learn. Please put your hands together for RFK and my sister Tulsi Gabbard. Bring them to the stage. Let's go.
And I'm back with the beaver hats and bandanas.
Let 'em know, let 'em know.
Strong, sturdy packer. No road gain in the propane flows. The chosen one, half the living proof. With the gift of gab from the city of truth. I jabbed and stabbed and knocked critics back. And I did not stutter when I said that. I'm going platinum, selling rap.
Thank you so
I
much.
went platinum 7 times.
Thank you guys so much. All right, we're gonna have a seat, and I want y'all to go ahead and have a seat too. I know some of you guys want to burn some calories by standing up, but it's not gonna count tonight, okay? First of all, Tulsi and Bobby, how y'all feeling tonight? You ready?
I feel great.
Yes.
How are you guys feeling?
I'm feeling like a landslide.
Well, we've got some amazing questions, and look, tonight's gonna be just this very informal, sincere conversation. So, here we go. What are we laughing about?
Did you hear the quacking sound too? Y'all are more important for whoever was calling him, just so you know.
All right, well, here we go. I've got some questions that I'm gonna ask, and look, as I said before, we're gonna be real, we're gonna be raw, we're gonna make it relevant, and we're talking about specific results for our great country. So the first question I have here tonight as the moderator is, you guys were Democrats, right? Long line of Democrats in this political party. What was it about the Democratic Party that had you both say, enough is enough, and I cannot, no longer will do this, and I'm going to change and shift over?
First of all, thank you, Septima, for being up here. This is the biggest thrill for me because I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Patriots fan, and when I saw, I didn't know he was going to be here tonight, but and I also want to just recognize Ron Johnson and Ron, over the past 5 years, has been my greatest ally in the United States Senate, and he's also become a close personal friend, and I'm so proud of everything he stands for his integrity and his leadership and his courage. And I also want to thank Eric Hovde for his words up here and for his commitment to these issues, the issues that I feel most strongly about. And if we're going to be effective after this election, we need to win not only the presidency, but we also need to win a lot of the down ballot races. And there is nobody that I want to see more in the Senate than Eric Hovde, because we are so aligned on so many issues. And I was born in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was home to me for all of my life. It was inconceivable to me a year ago that I would be anything other than a Democrat. My great-great-grandparents on all sides of my family came over in 1848 to Boston during the height of the potato famine. They came over penniless, without jobs, and without homes, without anything, and they were met on the docks in Boston by the Democratic Party, who found them jobs, who found them places to live. And this was the role of the Democratic Party for my whole life, to take care of the poor, take care of the dispossessed, people who were alienated. My great-grandfather, John Fitzgerald, was the first Irish Catholic mayor of Boston. His contemporary, Patrick Joseph Kennedy, was a state senator in Massachusetts and a political boss in Boston. Their son, or their grandson, my grandfather was, Joseph Kennedy was FDR's biggest contributor, and then was first head of the SEC under Franklin Roosevelt, was ambassador to the Court of St. James, and had other political appointments. It was close political ally. My uncle John Kennedy was the first Irish Catholic mayor of our Irish Catholic president of our country. My dad was Attorney General and Senator. My other uncle, Ted Kennedy, was one of the longest, I think the second longest serving member of the United States Senate. And for me, the Democratic Party it was part of my DNA. But the Democratic Party that I grew up with is gone. And people say to me, why did you leave the Democratic Party? I say, I didn't. The Democratic Party left me. And the Democratic Party that I was raised in was the party of peace. My uncle, John Kennedy, said that the principal job of a president of the United States is to keep the country out of war. And 30 days later, he was assassinated, and President Johnson then remanded that order and sent 250,000 troops abroad. My father died running against that war in 1968, and Nixon was elected and sent 560,000 troops over. 56,000 never came home. We were supposed to have learned a lesson from that war, which we didn't. The Democratic Party today is the party of Dick Cheney, is the party of John Bolton, is the party we were, Democratic Party traditionally was very skeptical and fearful of the CIA. My uncle spent his 3 years in office battling his intelligence apparatus. Today, 51 CIA officials have endorsed President or Vice President Kamala Harris. Vice President Kamala Harris gave a speech at the Democratic Convention that was written by the neocons. It was the most belligerent, pugnacious speech probably ever given by a Democratic at a convention. It was the party of civil rights, of constitutional rights. Today it's the party of division. It's the party of censorship and surveillance. It was the party that I grew up with was the party that was skeptical and fought against the corporate domination of American government, the corporate subversion of American government. Today, it's the party of big tech, big ag, big pharma, big food, the military-industrial complex, the war machine, the banking establishment, and the intelligence apparatus. And it was the party, it was the party of women's sports. My uncle Ted Kennedy wrote Title IX to make sure that women could play sports. And today, the Democratic Party is dismantling the rights of women to play sports at college. It was also the party of democracy. And we watch now, over the past 19 months that I've been running for president, the Democratic Party first, in order to avoid the primaries, literally cancel the primaries to keep a president in office who had advanced dementia. We now know. And then did a palace coup against him and anointed another candidate who's never won a vote and who is sued me in 10 states, first to keep me off the ballot and then to get me back on the ballot. So it's the party that when I was a kid was fighting to make sure that every American had a right to vote, and today it's the party that's making sure that we only get to vote for the candidates they choose. I could go on, but it's not the Democratic Party that I was raised with anymore, and I'm now transferred my allegiance with the Unity Party with Donald Trump, who stands for those issues.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you so much. Wow.
If you guys can help me out here, I'm just curious, how many of you here are Democrats or used to be Democrats? Raise your hands.
Wow.
Yes. You are not alone. You are not alone. So while I definitely do not have anywhere near the political and Democrat legacy that Bobby has, I know there's a lot of you out here who can relate to our journeys and the experiences that we've had and the frustrations that we've had in recognizing that today's Democrat Party stands against every one of those things that Bobby outlined. That for me, as someone who was 21 years old, I did not come from a partisan political family and made the decision then over 20 years ago to join the Democrat Party, largely inspired by people like his uncle, inspired by people like Reverend Martin Luther King, these civil rights icons, these champions of free speech, these champions of peace, those who led the Democrat Party and inspired this big open tent that said, we welcome everyone, regardless of your religion or your race or your ethnicity or where you come from or how you speak. Even though we may disagree on different issues, we stand together around the most important principles that are enshrined in our Constitution. That was the Democrat Party I joined over 20 years ago. When we look at where we are today, that party is no longer recognizable. And really, through the leadership of President Trump, we now see what Bobby has described. It is now the big open tent party. It is now the party of the people fighting for the working men and women in this country. It has become this inclusive party that doesn't have some arbitrary litmus test that says, hey, before you walk in the door, we're going to check your political credentials and make sure you're going to walk in lockstep. Not at all. Both Bobby and I met with President Trump, and there was not a single, I'll speak for myself, Bobby, but I've heard you share your conversations with him. There's an understanding that we're not going to agree on everything. We are not going to agree on everything. My husband and I don't agree on everything. You and Cheryl? But the point is, we are gathered together and standing together because we're motivated by the most powerful force that exists, and that is love. It is... And this has been one of the most beautiful things that I've experienced, and just seeing all of you here today, seeing the Democrats and former Democrats raise their hands, all of you embraced us with open arms, as President Trump has as well, because a movement that is motivated by love for God, love for our country, love for each other as Americans, that is the only way, that is the only thing that could bring such an amazing and incredible and diverse group of people together working towards this singular cause of defending freedom. Now, I'll touch on one thing that, Bobby Kennedy mentioned, Title IX. Been in place for over 50 years, and we've seen how it transformed opportunity for women and girls over that period of time. And all of the data is out there showing that, yes, in sports and in education, but how those experiences have set these young women up for success in business and entrepreneurialism and whatever profession that they chose because of those experiences and the lessons that they learned. Earlier this week, we were in Philadelphia with Riley Gaines and some other incredible athletes. Those who are currently still playing in different college sports, standing up courageously and letting their voices be heard, that feminism means you stand with women and girls and that you know what a woman is. The fact that not a single Democrat in the House or the Senate in Washington, D.C., had the courage to stand with women and girls in voting for legislation called the Protect Women and Girls in Sports Act, which simply upheld the original intent of Title IX. Not a single one of them had the courage to stand with us. Not a single one of them has had the courage to stand up for the safety of girls like I met in Philadelphia who played against a male in college volleyball, had a ball smashed into her face to the point where she had to get reconstructive face surgery, and she is still dealing with memory loss and the after effects of that trauma. Not a single one of them has stood up for women and girls. In fact, quite the opposite. When I was in Congress, Nancy Pelosi led an effort to change the language in the congressional rule book to erase the word mother and replace it with birthing parent, to replace the word wife with spouse, to replace the word mother with chest feeder. This is the insanity that we are dealing with, and one of the many reasons why I left the Democrat Party, because fundamentally, when it comes right down to it, and this has a consequence that reaches far beyond this issue of Title IX and boys being allowed in girls' locker rooms and the things that we're seeing, unfortunately, hurting our girls and women today and putting them at risk. The Democrat elite of today reject the existence of objective truth. In this case, the fact that there are biological differences between men and women. And when they cannot define what a woman is, and they say that they believe that anyone can be a woman as long as they say they are or they feel that they are, they believe, as we've seen in congressional testimony, that if Mike Tyson were to wake up tomorrow and say, you know what, I'm a woman, that he would then be able to go and compete in a boxing ring against a female boxer. They have no problem with that. When we have people in power who deny the existence of objective truth, all of the boundaries are erased, and what is true becomes whatever they say it is. And so when we look at what's at stake in this election, and we're going to talk about some of the other major issues that we face, the issues we're talking about are not Democrat versus Republican issues. These are things that affect every single one of us as Americans. And now is the time. Now is the time. You know, sometimes we look throughout history and think, well, you know, if I was alive during the march in Selma across that Edmund Pettus Bridge, I would have stood proudly with Martin Luther King and the great icons who had the courage in the face of a kind of adversity it's difficult for us to imagine. Right now, we are facing that moment where to take a stand for truth, for common sense, for women and girls requires courage. This is our moment to have the courage to stand up and fight for what is right.
Wow. Thank you, Bobby. And thank you, Tulsi. Thank you so much. You know, I took a picture with President Trump last week and I posted it on my social media. And
wait, hold on. Sorry. You got to tell him the first part of the story.
So
when Trump first saw you.
So our good friend walks in front of me to take a picture with President Trump, and President Trump looks over and he puts his hands up. And he goes, "Wow, who is that guy?" So I went and shook his hand.
And then he started, you know, are these things real?
He's like, "Wow, man, what are you eating? How much protein you taking in?" 5,000 calories an hour, President. But I posted this picture. You know, I never wanted to get involved with the politics. And again, I'm listening to my heart and I'm having this courage that Tulsi's talking about. I post a picture and thousands of followers disappear on my channels, and hundreds of messages of people I never met before, negative, pessimistic towards me. They're saying some things that I'm like, okay, they got some strong feelings here. So my question, I'm like, let me be like Jesus today, okay? But my question is, when you made the shift from the Democratic Party and you endorsed President Trump, like I posted a picture with me and the man I believe is fit to be the best president for our country, you know. Yeah. There had to have been some like colleagues and some blowback and some trash talk and just some things like, how did you guys deal with this? Because we're talking a long line of being in the Democratic Party, so people that you're close to, family members, how did you deal with that? And then the second part I want you to answer is, you know, how do you fight against the narrative which is so deeply entrenched to the point where the American people actually believe the narrative? So how did you deal with kind of the shifting and endorsing President Trump, and then how do you change the narrative?
You know, it is hard, especially when those who you really care about or those who you may be close to or friends with or even family members come out against you with harsh words or personal attacks, or people who just, you know, disappear out of your life all of a sudden because of, you know, my position, my views, the things that I am fighting for, the things that we are talking about. Of course, it's a hard thing to go through, and I've experienced it. Maybe some of you have. I've learned a few things through that. First of all, you learn a lot about the people around you. And you learn, as I have, about those who really do love and care about you as a person, even if you may have differences in politics, versus those who perhaps maybe never really cared about you at all. I have had some incredible conversations, both with people I'm close to, but people I've met along the way. In your question, Satema, about, you know, those maybe who just capture snippets of what they see on MSNBC or what they may see on the evening news or scrolling through the headlines, and they don't they don't have any counter to that narrative when it is an intentional narrative that's being pushed. I'll give you an example. We were just in New York City at Madison Square Garden with President Trump. And even before the event even started, you had Hillary Clinton comparing it to a neo-Nazi convention that occurred a long time ago. And then you had MSNBC airing a split screen between the event that was actually happening and black and white footage from that neo-Nazi convention. And meanwhile, for those of us who were there, really saw nothing but joy in that crowd. And we saw people of every single race. We saw people, people who were had the Israel's flag there. We had Indian Americans and Polynesians, and we saw people from all different backgrounds, all coming together as we are here tonight for love of country, for love of peace and freedom and prosperity. But if you read the headlines the next day, you would never believe that to be the case. So breaking through that propaganda is challenging, but I encourage you, especially as we're in these final 6 days of this election, to try to seek out those people in your life who maybe that's all they are seeing, and have a real conversation with them and ask them what they are most concerned about if they haven't decided how they're going to vote. Or maybe they're leaning away from Donald Trump because all they've seen are these headlines that have been running over the last few days that are completely baseless and not a reflection of what's real. Have a respectful and caring conversation with them. And I hope you have the opportunity, as I have, through these conversations, to let them know that you care about them and to find your way towards that common ground around those founding principles that are essential to all of us as Americans. Because those are the things that are on the line. In order for us to be able to have civil discourse and dialogue, to be able to agree to disagree, to be able to argue through our maybe differing ideas and come out with the best possible solution at the end of it, we have to be able to have the freedom of speech that we cherish in this country. And the facts reflect that there's a huge difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris on this. If you've been watching Donald Trump, he's been on a ton of podcasts lately. He was most recently on Joe Rogan for 3 hours. And I've seen a bunch of these podcasts, and he doesn't always agree with the host. And he'll say, no, I disagree with you on that, and here's what I believe, and, obviously you're entitled to your opinion. But you look at what the Democrat elite are doing. Hillary Clinton, for example, recently said that those who are spreading what she calls misinformation and disinformation should be charged with either should be pushed with either civil or criminal charges against them. But the issue here is, there's a lot of issues with that, but she believes that only her and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, the Democrat elite, are the ones who get to decide what is misinformation and disinformation. For example, those of us who rightly and fairly criticize the federal government's failed response to our brothers and sisters in Western North Carolina, instead of saying okay, we recognize people need help. We've got to do better. We've got to deploy more resources. We've got to figure out, come hell or high water, we need to be there for the people who have lost everything. Instead of recognizing their responsibility to care for the American people, what did they do? The White House spokesperson, President Trump, Vice President Harris, Hillary Clinton, they all got in front of cameras and said, those of you who are criticizing FEMA's response are dangerous. Our First Amendment was passed in the Bill of Rights with the intent of obviously protecting free speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, the right to peaceful protest. But at its core is our right as Americans to criticize our government when they're wrong. And so when you have these very, very powerful people saying that we are dangerous and that we are spreading misinformation and disinformation because we are criticizing our government when they fail us, say that we should be charged and arrested for a civil or criminal charges, we see how their mindset is more reflective of a dictatorship that does not believe in free speech and is eager to take it away. So I wanted to share that one but very critical example with you, because the conversations that we continue to have over this next week are very, very important. And it's important that we're prepared to counter the propaganda narratives that are being pushed with the facts and the truth that there is only one person running for president who believes in peace, freedom, and prosperity and is committed to achieving those things, and that's Donald Trump.
So to the first part of your question, which is about, which is a personal question about how do we handle when your friends abandon you or turn on you. And I spent my life, as I said, in the Democratic Party. There was almost nobody, no senator or congressman who would not take my phone call. My colleagues in the environmental community, even my family, who today I can't get anybody on the environmental community, from the environmental community, on the telephone. And I had, met congressmen and senators from the Democratic Party also feel that way. And I've had many people who walk away, as Tulsi has, from friendship. And I have my family also. They're members of my family is deeply ingrained in the Democratic Party. There are 5 members of my family that work for the administration, and they're very troubled by what I'm doing, and they're very public about expressing those feelings. And my reaction to that personally is that I grew up in a family where we read the lives of the saints, where we read and were talked to about history. And everybody that I have admired in my life, from the framers of the Constitution and the founders of this country, the saints like Augustine and St. Francis, the great historical figures like Alexander the great scientists like Darwin, etc. And all of those people who achieved greatness in their lives faced times in their lives where they faced pariahship by the public, where their families turned against them, where friends turned against them, where they were denounced publicly, and they had to walk through that valley of darkness. And so I always believed in my life that there may come a time in my life when I'd have to walk away from all the things I valued and loved for the sake of principle. And I believe that, when people are hypnotized today, and they're hypnotized by fear, and the manipulation of fear, the manipulation, the propaganda, by censorship, by all these things that are causing people who are deeply committed to a set of values to actually walk away from those values. And my attitude personally is that what other people say about me is not my business. My business is to figure out what the next right thing is and to do that thing no matter what the cost. And instead of reacting poisonously to the vitriol that's coming toward me, to react with love and to return with love and understanding and compassion. Because these are not bad people, they're Americans, but their capacity for critical thinking has been disabled by orchestrated fear. And that's why you won't hear Kamala Harris or any of the Democrats today talking about policies. You hear them saying Trump is like Hitler. He's going to be a dictator. He's a fascist. All of these name calling. And it has nothing to do with policy. And then if you look at President Trump, I saw J.D. Vance do this extraordinary interview today with Tim Dillon, which I urge you to watch. And it's all about policy. It's all about fixing the things that are wrong with this country. It's about ending the forever wars that have completely hollowed out our middle class in this country. It's about ending the surveillance and censorship. And what's happening, they're doing it right in front of us. And they somehow can hypnotize half the American public into thinking it's okay by making them fear the other side. But they've walked away from everything they value. I mean, imagine this. Kamala Harris at the convention was preceded immediately onto the stand. She gave this extraordinary belligerent speech, which was the most undemocratic speech that I've ever heard on a Democratic platform. She was preceded immediately by the former director of the CIA. The CIA agents have come out publicly and endorsed her. She has pocketed and touted proudly the endorsements by Dick Cheney and by John Bolton. These are the people who gave us the Iraq War, the worst foreign policy catastrophe in the history of mankind, of our country. We killed more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein. We went into that war on a lie that Dick Cheney and John Bolton told us. They manipulated us into that war. We created ISIS. We pushed Iraq today as just a warring, incoherent, it's not even a nation, it's an incoherent battle between Shia and Sunni death squads. We drove 4 million refugees into Europe and destabilized every democracy in Europe for generations. And we pushed Iraq into a proxy posture with Iran, which was exactly the foreign policy outcome that we've been trying to avoid for decades. And Dick Cheney does not think there's any problem with that war. So why is he endorsing Kamala Harris? Because he believes she feels the same way. Dick Cheney and John Bolton gave us the Patriot Act, which launched the surveillance and censorship state. They've never apologized for that. They don't think it's a bad idea. They're endorsing Vice President Harris because they believe that that is the policy of the neocons. That is the party of the neocons, which it is today. And so, and all of these issues, if you hear President Trump talk, he's constantly talking about how to rebuild the middle class in this country, how to stop the forever wars, how to restore the industrial base in this country, how to protect our constitutional rights. All of these issues, how to protect our border, which is critical to the American people and the American experience. How to make sure that democracy functions, how to make sure we can restore the moral authority of our nation that I experienced as a kid. How to make sure, J.D. Vance was talking today about this whole generation of American children that are destined for paupership, who will never own a home. And you'll never hear about this from the Democrats. And you'll never hear about it. How do we bring inflation under control? How do we lower the price of gas and groceries? How do we make sure that we're investing and reinvesting in our country and making our country, making sure he's not an isolationist. I heard that, him called an isolationist on CNN today. He's not an isolationist. He wants to have a good relationship with people all over the world and trade with people all over the world. He just thinks we should not be the policemen of the world. We should not be forcing our values on other nations at the barrel of a gun. He had this great interview with Kim Jong-il, where he said, Donald Trump is a real estate guy, and he wants to make deals. He wants to build wealth. He said to Kim Jong-il, let's stop building weapons and build condos together. And, and you know, that's the kind of president I want. I want a president who's not afraid to meet with dictators like my uncle did. Nikita Khrushchev developed such a close relationship. He said, you know, that the CIA knew nothing about the Kremlin and Nikita Khrushchev, nothing. And they said, it doesn't matter, it's just a communist monolith. They all want to conquer us. And my uncle said to Alan Dulles, it can't be like that. It's got to be more like Boston politics where everybody's at each other's throats. And let's see where those fissures are, where those rifts are, and let's start talking to it. He said, if you want to keep peace, you better understand the world from your adversary's point of view. So he did something. He did something that the CIA hated him for, which he created a hotline directly to the Kremlin so that he could communicate directly with Khrushchev 24 hours a day. And he put that hotline at his White House office and at our home in Capitol Hill. The wires for that are still protruding from my brother's house, who owns the Summer White House in Cape Cod. And they developed such a close relationship, they were able to avoid nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis, during the Checkpoint Charlie crisis in Berlin in '62. They were able to avoid a war in Laos, and they were able to keep the world peaceful. And when my uncle died, Khrushchev wept. And that's the kind of relationship that Donald Trump wants with our adversaries. He was absolutely eviscerated by the liberal press for meeting with Kim Jong-il and meeting with Vladimir Putin. He said, they said, he loves dictators. He doesn't love dictators. He just thinks it's a responsibility of the American president to talk to our adversaries so we can stay out of war. And that's what we want from a president.
Yes. Everyone say, repeat after me, zero. One more time, zero. Zero wars when President Trump was in office. Yeah. And I had a question, I was going to ask this question, which is, you know, you're seeing the invasion of Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, you're seeing just the we're seeing all these actions of Hamas, and the question, and they've answered it already. I was going to ask this question: why are we seeing so much unrest with no end in sight? And they've answered that because, again, Tulsi, you've said it. I've heard you say this: a vote for the Democratic Party when it comes to war. And if you just wouldn't mind sharing that here.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby spoke very eloquently about the contrast on this issue of peace and war between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. What kind of president and commander-in-chief Kamala Harris would be. President Trump has already shown us through his record what kind of president and commander-in-chief he was and will be again, especially during this time of global crisis. The thing that I'll add to what Bobby said about Kamala Harris and why she has earned the support of Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and just about every other neocon in Washington is that they know that she will continue the standard that Joe Biden has set in being a figurehead that they can pass their talking points to, and who will do what the national security state, the military-industrial complex, and the neocons want her to do. I don't have any doubt that this is true, both because we have 4 years under a Harris-Biden administration that has proven this to be the most profitable time for the military-industrial complex and the most disastrous time for us as the American people, but for humanity in the world, because their foreign policy decisions have pushed us closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. What President Kennedy and Khrushchev worked so hard to try to prevent, because they understood that this threatens all of humanity, that President Ronald Reagan understood the seriousness of, and he worked with Gorbachev to try to prevent nuclear war, and said very accurately that a nuclear war can never be won and should never be fought. Kamala Harris will say what her pollsters and those who are controlling her want her to say. She stood and looked at us through the camera on that debate stage and said confidently and without hesitation that there is not a single active duty service member deployed to any combat zone anywhere in the world for the first time in a century. Whether she was lying or she just really doesn't know that there are tens of thousands of my brothers and sisters in uniform who have been and who continue to be in harm's way today, whatever the case is, it is an immediate disqualifier for her to be our president. Because I don't know about you, but I've been serving in the Army for over 20 years. I'm a lieutenant colonel and a commander in the Army Reserve today. And thank you to all the veterans who are here joining us. Thank you. Thank you. USA, USA, USA.
USA, 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 USA.
But I'm sure you all felt the same way that I did. When I saw her utter those words, and I was backstage at that debate, watching it on the screen, but it pissed me off. Because I have friends who are deployed and in harm's way today. And how dare she ask us to trust her to be our commander-in-chief when she has no clue that there are people who are laying their lives down for our country because of her and Joe Biden as she stood there and uttered those words. And so for coming from someone who tells us she is in the Situation Room with Joe Biden every day, that she is the last person to leave the room before he makes any major decision, that she is a person who Joe Biden has trusted with every issue related to domestic and foreign policy, she either has no idea what's going on in the world or with our military, or she cares so little about those who are less than 1% of Americans in this country who raise our right hand and say, I'm willing to lay my life down for the country that I love, that she is not even willing to acknowledge their sacrifice and the sacrifice of their family members today. And yet she's asking us to trust her with the nuclear codes and to trust her with the decisions about where we are sent into harm's way and what wars she will start. She wants us to trust that she will care for our men and women who come home safely, but who will need help and care from our Veterans Affairs Administration. I have warned the American people about Kamala Harris being commander-in-chief ever since 2019 when she was running for president. Because as we have seen her demonstrate in this campaign, she cares so little for those who are willing to lay their life down for our country, that she would not hesitate to use my brothers and sisters in uniform to mask the insecurity and weakness that she feels, that she would deploy us into harm's way and drop bombs in other countries as a means to try to look tough, to prove her strength as our commander-in-chief. Every one of us who volunteered to serve, and our veterans, please raise your hand here tonight. I am honored and privileged to stand with you, and I think I can speak for every one of you when I say we know what we signed up for. Willing to die for the country that we love, to defend the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. We did not sign up for some insecure, weak politician to use us and our brothers and sisters as cannon fodder to make her look tough. This is real. This is real. I'll never forget my brothers and sisters who never made that trip home with us. They're in my heart every day. They are why I'm here. They are why I'm standing with President Trump in this election. Because he is the leader who has the courage and the strength to fight for peace.
You know, earlier tonight, oh, go ahead, please, Bobby, go ahead.
I was reminded when Tulsi was talking about a couple of incidents that happened during the Kennedy administration. At one point, very early on in his administration, the Joint Chiefs came and gave him a presentation called Operation Northwoods that was designed to create a provocation that would allow us to make a unprovoked attack on the Soviet Union and nuclear attack. And they said, we got to do it now because we have them beat in the number of missiles that we have, and they may close that missile gap soon. And he said, are we going to win that war? And they said, yeah, because we're going to kill 130 million of them, and they'll only kill 30 million of us. And my uncle walked out of the meeting shaking his head, and he said, and they call themselves the human race. And during the Cuban Missile Crisis, his Joint Chiefs, again, Louis Lemonster, Lucius Clay, Curtis LeMay, and Alan Dulles, who was the head of the CIA, told him that we're talking about the missile emplacements in Cuba. And he said, but who's manning those missile emplacements? Are they Russians? And they said, we don't know. And how many people on each of the 64 bases? And they said 500 people to operate each one. And he said, are they Russians? And they said, probably. And he said, if we kill Russians, aren't they going to have to go into Berlin? And isn't that going to be an end of the nuclear war? And they said, they don't have the guts to go into Berlin. And that was their answer. And he said, in the end, he took a vote of his ExComm committee, which is 13 people who lived with him for 13 days at the White House, including my dad. And 8 members of that committee voted to go in to invade Cuba and to bomb those sites, and 6 of them said no. And my uncle said the 6s have it, meaning there was only one vote that counted. Now, I tell that long story because we need a president of the United States. There is a national security state in Washington, D.C. that for 70 years has wanted a nuclear exchange with the Soviet Union and with Russia today. And we need a president who's going to be able to make up their own mind. And the thing that I worry about Kamala Harris is that everything she says is read off a script. She can't depart from the script. We see when her teleprompter breaks, she gets paralyzed. And when she was reading that speech at the Democratic Convention, which I'm still shocked about, I was thinking that speech was not written by her. It was written by the national security establishment and the neocons. And she can't talk off a script. And I'm scared that if she becomes president of the United States, the people who will be writing her everyday script are that national security establishment. And they're the people who are going to be running our country. It's the Dick Cheneys, the John Boltons, and all of those anonymous men and women in lanyards who are going to be running this country. And that's what we're voting for. And they want a president who is incapacitated. And that's why they love Joe Biden. And now they have another president who's not doing her own thinking, a vice president, presidential candidate. And we need somebody who's going to do their own thinking in the White House. And in April of 2022, the Russians have been telling us, not just Putin, every Russian and every sector of Russian society has been telling us since 1992, you cannot put NATO in Ukraine. It is a red line for us. Russia shares a 2,200-mile border with Ukraine. We promised Russia when they dismantled the Soviet Union in 1992 that we would not move NATO to the east. Since then, we've moved it 14 nations and 1,000 miles to the east, so we broke our word. The one thing they said, you cannot put it in Ukraine. We put Aegis missile systems in Poland and Romania as soon as they came into NATO. Those missiles are Tomahawk missiles that can with nuclear war, that can be armed with nuclear warheads and can reach the Kremlin in 12 minutes. And the Russians have said, don't do it. They said, absolutely, you cannot do that in Ukraine because those missiles can hit the Kremlin in 3.5 minutes. So we could decapitate the entire Russian leadership in 3.5 minutes. What if they did that in Cuba? What if they did it in Mexico? What if they did it in Canada? How long would it take us to invade? This is not a war of expansion for the Russians, as we've been lied to by MSNBC and CNN. This is a war about national security. Ukraine has no strategic interest. The U.S. has no strategic interest in Ukraine, none, zero. The Russians have a profound strategic interest in Ukraine. They've been invaded 3 times through Ukraine. The last time, Hitler killed 1 out of every 7 Russians. Oh, they care about Ukraine. It's absolutely essential to them that it stays neutral. In April of 2022, Kamala Harris went to Germany and said, we are moving NATO in Ukraine. They're not listening to the Russians. They're not only not talking about them, to them, they're not listening to them. 2 days after that, the Russians invaded. And immediately, Vladimir Putin offered a peace agreement. And President Zelensky signed that agreement. They negotiated in Istanbul. Zelensky asked President Biden to help him negotiate it, and Biden said no. He asked President Xi of China to help him negotiate it, and Xi said no. He went to Turkey. President Erdogan and Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister of Israel, said, we will help. And they made an agreement that we would keep NATO out of Ukraine, and Putin initialed it, Zelensky initialed it, and Putin began withdrawing his troops. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris sent Boris Johnson to Ukraine and forced Zelensky to tear up that agreement. And since then, 600,000 kids in Ukraine have died in this war, and 300,000 Russians, which we should not be celebrating. And now, Ukraine, we've been told by MSNBC and CNN, we're winning this war from day one. There were those of us who were saying from day one, we cannot win this war. Ukraine cannot win this war, never, any more than Cuba can win a war against the United States. Russia cannot allow that to happen. So now that Ukraine is being overrun, they're getting desperate. And Zelensky knows the only way for him to win that war is if he can get US troops involved. And the way that he did that is by invading Russia in Kursk. Something the Russians have said, that's why we don't want NATO in Ukraine, because you're going to invade us. And we invaded them. And then President Biden and the White House gave Ukraine permission to shoot Storm Shadow missiles into Russian territory from the Ukraine with US technology. And Putin was saying, if you do that, we will respond with nuclear warheads. And Biden didn't listen to him. And the Russians changed their law because all the nations in the world that have nuclear warheads have signed an agreement to never use them preemptively, to never use them in a first strike. And Russia signed that agreement, we did not. Russia just changed that agreement a month and a half ago to say, now we will. If you send missiles from Ukraine to us, we're going to do it. The Biden administration wanted to do it, and the only reason they didn't is because there was a mutiny in the Pentagon. And the Pentagon said, we're not going to do it. You cannot do this. Because why? Russia has 1,500 more nuclear warheads than we do, and they're better. And they have a better defensive system than we do. And we've forced them into an alignment with China, with North Korea, with Iran, and this is World War III. And the Pentagon's own study says that World War III will last 63 minutes, and that 5.6 billion human beings will die. And they're saying, the White House is saying the same thing. Anthony Blinken, Joe Biden, the same thing that the Joint Chiefs of Staff said to my uncle in 1963. They don't have the guts to do it. That's their only argument. They're not talking to Putin. We need a president who's going to go talk to Putin, and that's what President Trump says he's going to do. His first day in office.
Can I get an amen? Wow, we have been richly fed tonight. You know, I said earlier when we started to listen with your heart. And I hope you guys have felt the spirit of truth as it has been shared by Brother Kennedy and Sister Gabbard here. You know, as we wrap up, well, first of all, have you guys felt something tonight? Raise your hand. Yeah. It's been amazing. It's been amazing. So, you know, as we wrap up tonight, what an amazing evening and a blessing for all of us. You know, we've got 8, 9, 10 days till the election. And, you know, we're talking about a vote for President 7, 6, 5. Okay, thank you guys. Your math is better than me, okay? I love it. You know, final words, if someone is on the fence or if someone is just unsure what a vote for President Trump would mean in making America healthy again, right? Making America great again. I'm going to leave this last question for you both to answer as you feel. What needs to happen with everyone in this room and everyone that they know? What needs to take place, and how does a vote impact the future of America and our children and our children's children?
Yeah, so let me start out, and I'll let Tulsi wrap up, but I want to just tell you something really important. Today, I lost a case in the United States Supreme Court. As I said before, the Democratic Party was suing me in 10 states to keep me off the ballot, including here. And as soon as I switched to Donald Trump, they changed their lawsuits to keep me on the ballot. And that lawsuit in Michigan and Wisconsin just went to the Supreme Court, and today, in a split decision, the Supreme Court said no, that I'm going to remain on the ballot in Wisconsin and Michigan. And there were the conservatives on the court, led by Neil Gorsuch, all dissented. But because of that case, because the Democratic Party wants me on the ballot. Now, why do they want me on the ballot? They know I'm not running for president. They want me on the ballot because they want to do election interference. They're all talking about the integrity of the election. They want me on the ballot to trick people into voting for me instead of voting for President Trump. And what I'm saying to you is, do not fall for that ploy. I don't want your vote. I want you to vote for Donald Trump. Everybody's got to vote.
Bobby Kennedy, everybody. So I'm going to stand up because we got a lot of people standing in the back, and I want to see all of you before we say goodnight here. This is a special night for many reasons, but Bobby Kennedy and I have been traveling across the country having conversations like this with voters in many different states, and tonight's the last time we're going to share a stage before Election Day. So thank you for being here to join us for this special night. We love you too. We are 6 days out from Election Day. Today's Tuesday, right? All right. Early voting has begun all across the country. Before coming here, I think this is the second or third time I've been here as a part of this campaign, I have heard over and over again people say, don't bother going to Madison. We're ignoring them, naturally. Because we believe in the spirit of the American people. We believe in our appreciation for freedom and peace and prosperity. We believe in each other, and we believe in the vision that our founders had for us. When we reflect and we go back and look at the words that they very carefully put into our founding documents, when they wrote, "We the people," that was a call to action to us. When they said that our government exists only with the consent of the governed, they're talking about us. So as we spend our time frustrated and angry and hurt and disappointed by the fact that we have too many people in our government who don't care about the people, who are more interested in their own power, in their own bank accounts, in their own future than they care about the everyday struggles that we the people are going through all across this country, it's time for us to rise up and say, you gotta go. You know, my brother Sitema started out this evening sharing with you his own feeling that reflects a feeling that I've heard from too many people across the country of hopelessness, that your voice doesn't matter because the powers of the elite in Washington and the big propaganda media and big tech and big pharma and all of these entities, the military-industrial complex, all of whom are conspiring to hold on to power and to squash and suppress our freedom and our voices and our ability to choose who we want to serve in office. It creates a dark cloud over this once vibrant democratic republic. And just as I had that conversation with Sitema at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, a couple of years ago now, It's the same conversation I want to have with you. They are doing all of this because they're afraid of us. They're doing all of this because they recognize that there is no greater threat to their power than a free people in a free country making sure that our voice is heard and that we get to say who we want serving us in our government, not them. And I share this with you. You know this. You're here. You're fired up. But I guarantee you, you have people in your life who feel maybe that sense of powerlessness and hopelessness. Here's the truth. We are only powerful if we use that power. Our voices will only be heard if we use them, if we exercise them. And so this is our no-fail mission to save our country, to save the world, to defend freedom and get us back on that path towards peace, freedom, and prosperity for all Americans. How many of you have already voted? Nice. So for those of you who have voted, those of you who haven't voted yet, here's the challenge I have for you. Before you lay your head down on the pillow tonight, I want you to think in your own life about 10 people. I want you to write down 10 names. People, I know you know 10 people. We all know at least 10 people. Think about who you can reach out to, who you will be accountable for, and stay in touch. Find out, have they made up their minds yet? If they said, oh no, I'm voting for Kamala Harris, ask them why. Have a real conversation. If they're not sure, ask them what they care about. What is it that makes them still undecided at this point? Have a real conversation. If they say, yeah, I'm supporting President Trump, but I haven't voted yet, say, okay, you call me with a picture of that receipt that says you voted. You be accountable for 10 people in your life to make sure they go out and cast that vote, because now is the time. November 6th, it'll be too late. Now is the time for us to stand together, not as Democrats or Republicans or independents or libertarians, but as Americans who love our country and who cherish peace and freedom to save our country and do all that we possibly can, understanding that sometimes we may get attacked. You know that sometimes we will face obstacles. There are some days when you may feel that hopelessness, but I get, trust me. But in those moments where you feel like you've done all you can, I encourage you to do what I do and think of those who have come before us, both those who have worn the uniform and the great leaders we have talked about here tonight who put it all on the line for our country and push just a little harder, because this country is worth it. We are worth it. Our future is worth it. Every single vote here in Dane County, every single vote here in Wisconsin could be the difference between saving our country or seeing the darkness continue. Thank you all so much. We love you. Let's go save our country. Aloha.
Devil without a cause, and I'm back with the beaver hats and Ben Davis slacks. 30 pack of strolls, 30 pack of no road gain in the propane.